in the pandemic, something very terrible happened. I turned 40, and I remember I was taking this bike ride, and I had one of those moments, maybe you know these moments, where just from out of nowhere, you just feel really, really lucky and grateful for where you are in life, and that's a neat feeling. And I was like, all right, so I'm 40. If I'm lucky, I live another 40, right? So this is an interesting little like halfway point in my life. And you know, what can I possibly do to give back for the second half of it, right? And I was like, just pondering this question, like it's important to me to be able to, you know, help other people get to this feeling of like gratitude that I have right now. And later that day, I was scrolling through my Instagram, as you do, and I passed a advertisement from my favorite meditation teacher, a super famous meditation teacher named Jack Kornfield. And it was this huge 2-year online teacher certification program. I'm like, that's it. Thank you, universe. I hear you. So I enrolled, and I'm at the point now where you have to do a practicum of teaching at least 6 students, and I have to record myself, and I have a mentor who has to see me do this. It's all very embarrassing, and I have the butterflies. Okay, so that's why I'm here, and I will begin this first session. So, mindfulness, I feel like is very similar to that word, momentum, right? And it's similar in the sense, not just because they both start with M, but because it's a word that we often use in sentences. We think that we know what it means, but if somebody really asks you to define mindfulness or momentum, a lot of times you just wave your hands and you wouldn't necessarily be able to say exactly what it is, right? And it sounds like all of you kind of received inputs and ideas of what mindfulness is from many different sources. And so I thought it would be best to start with a clean slate. And when you start with a clean slate, what do you usually? You usually erase what's there before. So I want to start with what mindfulness isn't, all right? And like, not to ruin the ending, but most of these things that I'm saying mindfulness isn't, they're things that I once thought it was, and I had to realize that that's not what it is, okay? So, number 1, mindfulness is not magic, it's not hypnosis, and it's not some sort of a trance, all right? A lot of people think that that's what it is. When I was 17, what I thought was cool about mindfulness was that I was gonna get some Harry Potter type skills. I thought that was gonna be really cool, right? Give me an edge over other people. And it took a long time before I realized that wanting an edge over other people is exactly the ego that mindfulness is trying to, you know, tamp down a little bit. Okay, so mindfulness isn't magic. Mindfulness is not some drug that makes all your bad feelings go away, and it's not some special trick to make you feel good all the time. And I learned that the hard way many times. I honestly used mindfulness almost like a pill at times in my life. Like, I'm feeling sad, I'm anxious, I broke up with somebody, I should do a lot of meditating, right? And meditating can help, but it doesn't help in the way that immediately your bad feelings go away and that, you know, you're replaced by these good feelings. It helps in the way that you can live in harmony with what hurts, right? And I think that's one of the most powerful tool that mindfulness has to offer is you can make a home for, you know, your pain. And we, frankly, in American culture, suck at that, okay? It's how do I push it away? How do I push it away? And this one is important. Mindfulness is not a religion. I worry sometimes that people never get to mindfulness or never see its value because they're afraid that it's somehow in conflict with their faith. And I have an awesome example of the opposite. A very dear friend of mine is the head chaplain at the John Muir Medical Center in Walnut Creek, California, and she is in this program with me. So she is her whole job is to be a Christian chaplain for people who are sick, right? And I was like, what's the deal? She's like, meditation makes me a better Christian. And I'm like, how is that? She's like, well, it gives me the tools to live the way that Christians are supposed to live, right? And so the beautiful thing about mindfulness is there's this flexibility to it where it can make you better at your own faith. And if you don't happen to have a faith, it can just make you a better human. And I think that's cool. Okay, so 3 things. Mindfulness is not magic. It's not a drug that makes you feel good all the time. And it's not a religion. Okay. So if it's none of those things, what is mindfulness? And I'll tell you after I take a sip. Okay, the most common definition of meditation that you hear in books and in blogs and in, people talking on YouTube is paying attention in the present moment without judgment. And I know some of you might be like, what? I gave up my Wednesday night for that? That sounds boring, right? So it's so boring. But the truth of the matter is, most humans don't realize how much they're not paying attention because they're truly lost in thought, right? How much they're not living in the present moment because they're regretting something that happened in the past, or they are worried or terrified of something that's going to happen in the future, or if something's going to work out. And they often don't realize how much they're walking around judging everything. I hate that. I love that. That's okay. This is a cloud of just head stuff that gets in the way of us living the only life that we have, right? And it's a bummer that most of us live life in that state, right? And so the promise of mindfulness is that it's not being perfect at paying attention in the present moment without judgment. We will never be, right? Our brains are like these thoughts creating objects. They just create thoughts. That's what they do, right? And that's what's put us at the top of the food chain, because we're so creative because these thoughts keep coming out. But we can do better in terms of savoring and enjoying life in the present moment, okay? Mindfulness is also a mirror that reflects the world exactly as it is. Not how we want it to be, not how we're always hoping it's going to be, right? The world is challenging sometimes, right? Life can be really hard. And sometimes we spend so much energy resisting how the world is, right? And hoping it's different, that we're exhausted and can't use that energy to actually change what we can change in the world and within ourselves, right? So mindfulness helps us just be a mirror to the present moment, okay? Mindfulness is a tool that alerts us as to how we're thinking and feeling so that we don't do dumb stuff, okay? So how many of you have ever had a thought and the thought quickly overwhelms you and you say or do something that you totally regret? Everyone, right? Actually, I know. You have not. It's never happened. Okay. How many of you have ever had some feeling, some emotion that suddenly overwhelms you and you say or do something that you regret? Yeah. And again, this is a very human thing. It happens all the time. But what if we had some sort of alarm system, some sort of built-in alarm system that was like, okay, I'm aware that I'm thinking something dumb. I'm aware that I'm feeling something powerful that could overwhelm me. Maybe I should focus on making sure that I act within my values, right? So mindfulness is also this basically built-in alarm system, okay? And this one is probably the most important. This is the one that I think has been the most helpful in my own life. Mindfulness helps us notice our limiting beliefs so that we can let them go. So what's a limiting belief? A limiting belief is any thought that you have that is so recurring in your life that you don't even notice it anymore. And it just becomes a major belief that you have about the world. And very often, those beliefs limit your potential in life. Now, I'm gonna say 5 big ones, and I'm not gonna make you raise your hand because it could be embarrassing, but just take note if any of these are some belief that even in the subtlest way that you feel like you've held on in some way in your life, okay? All right, number 1, I can't be fully happy until I accomplish blank. Right? I'm not allowed to be happy until I accomplish whatever. Right? It could be a degree, it could be a marriage, it could be a certain job, it could be publishing, right? Whatever. 2, I can't live a fulfilling life until my anxiety or depression goes away. 3, I'm not likable enough to be loved by anyone. 4, I'm not attractive enough to be loved by anyone. 5, I'm not smart enough to get what I want out of life. I think that's it. Oh, no, I have one more. If that's not enough. If I feel bad feelings or think bad thoughts, then I must be broken. Okay? I will go ahead and be vulnerable and say that at some point or another, I've had all of these limiting beliefs, right, at some point in my life. And are any of them true? I don't think so. I don't think so. I had a period in my life where I actually had really, really bad anxiety in my 20s, to the point where it could have really gone another way. Like, you know, it could have crippled me. And at some point, I'm like, I don't need to say no to everything. I can live the life I want to live, even if I'm terrified. And when I made that decision, my life opened up. And I'm glad I did, right? So what does mindfulness do? It shines enough warmth and light on those limiting beliefs so that they can slowly melt, right? They can loosen up over time. Imposter syndrome is a limiting belief, right? I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to be here. I'm not as smart as these other people. They're gonna find out that I'm not deserving, okay? All right, so that's what mindfulness is. It's a lot of big promises, I know, but this is obviously a step-by-step, slow process that unfolds over an entire lifetime. But we're going to start just here in this one little meditation class. So, what is meditation? I just defined mindfulness. What is meditation? Are they the same thing? A lot of times they're used together, all right? Meditation is any practice that helps us live in a state of mindfulness, right? So, what can we do? What kind of exercises? What's our calisthenics? What's our jogging that actually makes us better at paying attention in the present moment without judging? And these 6 sessions that we have together, each one, we're gonna, after a little talk like I'm doing right now, we're gonna practice one technique of meditation so that you can practice this skill of living mindfully. And so if mindfulness, it means paying attention, what is it that we're actually paying attention to? And so typically, meditation teachers focus on 4 things, right? And we're going to be focusing on these things over these next 6 weeks. So we're paying attention to our bodies, okay? Where is our tension? Where are we tight? Are we stressing ourselves out in ways that we don't even realize it? We live in a society where there's so many distractions that it becomes really, really easy to become disembodied. We just lose touch with our body, right? And we don't listen to it. And especially as you get older, when you get into your 40s, that becomes a little harder. Okay, second, we pay attention to our emotions, right? How are we feeling? What's our mood? Evolutionarily speaking, our emotions are our greatest motivators, right? We feel emotions so that we live better, so that we survive better. So why do we feel lonely? Why is loneliness a thing that humans feel? Because we survive better when we're with other people, right? When we're in community. Why is it that we feel afraid? Well, because if we withdraw from things that are dangerous and scary, we are better able to survive, right? So emotions have this true power to motivate us, but sometimes they're a little miscalibrated. And sometimes we feel emotion and we don't realize it and we do the thing that we regret, right? And lastly, thirdly, we pay attention to thoughts. And I think this is a really powerful one because it's those thoughts that if unchecked and you keep thinking them, they turn into those limiting beliefs that I was talking about a little while ago. Okay, finally, we pay attention to just the flow of life. How do all these things interact with each other? How is it sometimes where I'll have a thought and then that thought will turn into an emotion that'll make me feel tight in the body, and then that'll make me feel like I might say, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way, and then I have another thought that makes me feel even worse, and suddenly there's this feedback loop and I'm having a full panic attack, right? So what if you shed some light on that, the light of mindfulness, on that process, and you interrupt it before it becomes that full panic attack, or that full meltdown, or the full totally feeling terrible, whatever it may be. Okay, it's a lot of info. And since you are all science folk, I thought it would be important just to end by sharing, as you suggested, Mari, a few of the actually researched benefits of mindfulness. Thousands of studies have been done at this point since the 1980s about the benefits and physiological and psychological effects of mindfulness. And they include, the benefits of these include less ruminating about depressive thoughts. So notice it doesn't say no depressive thoughts. Again, our minds are like, the liver secretes insulin, our minds secrete thoughts. That's what they do. You're gonna have thoughts. Some of them are gonna be, I'm amazing. Some of them are gonna be, I'm terrible, right? That's gonna happen no matter what. What the difference is that mindfulness allows us to not ruminate about them. We notice, oh, hey, depressive thought about me being stupid. I see you. And then you can let it go as opposed to believing it and continually thinking about it, right? Okay, lower overall stress and release stress hormones in the body, better memory, less emotional reactivity, greater relationship satisfaction, enhanced self-insight and morality, greater empathy and compassion for each other, greater quality of life, and a greater capacity to feel joy. How many of you have felt really happy, like notice yourself feeling really happy, and then like 2 seconds later you get the thought, oh, this is just gonna go away like everything else. Yeah. And then you're afraid of actually feeling happy, right? Well, what if instead you just notice that thought, oh, this is just gonna go away like anything else, I might as well not enjoy it, right? What if you said, I hear you thought, I hear you mind, and you just went back to enjoying your happiness, okay? So I wanna end the first talk there. I wanna just remind you that this isn't easy. Again, this is not a pill, right? This is, so whatever degree you would like, you choose something you can practice in life, And the one promise that I do have, though, that I can just tell you from my own experience and experience of thousands of other people out there, is that if you can develop this intimacy with yourself, this intimacy with the present moment, then life starts to open up a little bit, and you feel a little bit more in control of your own space, of your own world, and that's powerful. Okay. All right. So you may have some questions, and we will have a Q&A for like the last 10 minutes. But for right now, we are going to do the first meditation practice. We're going to practice meditating for the first time, and it's where everyone starts. And I'm sure it's where you started and what you do sometimes, which is just mindfulness of the breath. Being aware of the fact that our bodies are always breathing. Um, so, I'll start by saying you all can pick whatever position is the most comfortable for you. I like these little seats because they like keep me vertical better. But if you don't, that's totally cool. The important thing is that you're in a position that's two things. Alert, right? As much as possible, you want to not fall asleep, right? So being erect helps you not being, having your spine aligned helps you be alert. And at the same time, while you're also alert, you want to be also relaxed, right? You don't want to be in this state of tension. So try to find that position, whatever feels right. I usually meditate with my eyes closed. I find it easier to meditate because obviously there's less distractions, less input, less sensory input. I also want to acknowledge that may not feel safe now. If that's fine, if that's true, that's fine. You can keep your eyes open. But I'm going to close my eyes. And first thing that's helpful to do is just kind of noticing if there's any tension in the body. And if you do notice it anywhere, just see if you can let it go. If something feels especially balled up and you can't let it go, don't let that turn into any judgment. Just say, okay, it's cool. I see you, little ball. But as much as possible, just letting go of any tension that you're carrying from the day. And once you've let go of as much tension as possible, just notice your body breathing. A lot of times when you notice your breathing, it's very tempting to interfere with it, right? You want to take a deep breath, or you want to breathe in a certain way, or maybe you think you're breathing too fast, or you think you're breathing too slow. But just know your body's got this. It breathes with or without you 24 hours a day. So just being this observer, almost like a scientist, just watching this body of yours breathing. You may notice that there's certain areas where you sense it or feel it the strongest. So try to take note of where you feel your body breathing the most. Some people, it's right at the tip of their nostrils. Some people, they feel the air coming and going against their upper lip. some people, they might feel it most in their chest. It's rising and falling in the chest. Some people might feel it the most in their bellies. It's kind of rising and falling in your belly. There's no right or wrong place to feel it the strongest. But wherever it is, put your attention there. And just notice the body breathing all by itself at its own pace, its own depth, with or without you. You might notice that every breath has its own little life cycle. Right? There's this little birth, breath inhales, begins, and there's like this peak, and then there's a little exhale. It's almost like every breath is a little life. Notice each little phase. The inhale, peak, and the exhale. At this point, you may notice that occasionally your mind slips away, maybe more than occasionally. For a lot of us, it's hard to get full 2 breaths without the mind starting to chatter. And then sometimes that chatter is like so seductive that you get lost in it completely. Whenever this happens, just very kindly and very gently bring your attention back to the breath, to that place where you feel the breath the strongest. might notice that when you catch yourself lost in thought, you might notice a judgment. You might notice yourself say, I suck at this. Or, that's not supposed to happen. Or, I'm a bad meditator. When you notice that judgment, just smile at it. Say, I see you. And then bring your attention kindly and gently back to your breath. And that in itself is mindfulness. That's a success. Whereas before, you might have just been lost in thought for the next 15 minutes. You noticed it. You brought your attention back to your breathing. See if you can take a couple minutes just to practice that. Reiterate, if you get lost in thought, if your mind drifts away from the breath, you didn't make a mistake. That doesn't make you bad meditator. If you notice it, you bring it back to bring your attention back to your breath, then you're developing the power of your attention. You're developing mindfulness. You're developing your ability to notice what's happening in the moment. Big misconception that to be a good meditator, you are perfect little Buddha who his mind never wanders, her mind never wanders. But I've been doing this for 23 years and my mind wanders all the time. I'm just better and better at noticing. Let's take just one more minute to notice the body breathing. Sorry, I didn't warn you that bell means you can stop meditating. Three hits of the bell. Cool. I made it. Yeah, so I want to open it up now to any of you either sharing an experience, something that surprised you, something you noticed, maybe sharing a misconception that you had, or like some sort of epiphany. It's fine if you didn't have an epiphany. Or open it up to questions. So either or, sharing something about your experience or any questions that came up. Yeah.
This happens to me a lot. Whenever I meditate, I feel like I'm just swinging back and forth. I just feel like I'm doing like this. And then like I help.
Have you ever just opened your eyes and see if you are swaying?
Yeah, and then I'm not.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. So, what do you think my answer is going to be? Yes, you are a human pendulum. It has a certain rate. No. Do you have a hunch of what I might say? No?
Can I say what?
Yeah, go for it.
So I have the same thing, but I think it's because you're trying to quiet, kind of like, you're trying to quiet your mind in a sense, and so then you start focusing on something else kind of makes sense too. Because I notice when I quiet my mind, I feel the same thing. Like I felt like I was going like this, like back and forth.
Yeah.
And I think it's like because I'm trying to silence what's kind of going on up here, then I start focusing on like bodies. I'm like, ooh, okay, wait, my back kind of hurts on this side. Or ooh, my foot's falling asleep. Like, so I think that my mind, because I'm trying to quiet what's going on up here, then I start paying attention like, okay, you know what, his muscles are moving over here, and I'm saying right towards that. It's my kind of match.
Yeah, that totally happens, right? I mean, you're developing this power of awareness, right? Of noticing things, right? And so you're going to be noticing things that happen in the body, even if that's not the instruction. The mind wanders, it's fine, right? But also, you're getting in a state of extreme relaxation, right? You're becoming really relaxed, and so there's just sometimes weird stuff happens, right? Sometimes it's a feeling of swaying. Sometimes there'll be a burst of light. Sometimes like weird colors, right? Yeah, it's never what it's about. People are like, a lot of people are like, dude, how come she gets the cool colors? How come she gets the swaying, right? So don't start feeling like you're doing something wrong if you're not experiencing that. But it's just another thing to just notice, right? It's not good or bad or wrong, or it's just something about that state of relaxation creating some neurological pathways that are flowing now that weren't flowing there before. It could be something like your mind reminding yourself of being that relaxed in a state when you're rocking, because that rocking is a relaxing thing. We're all rocked as babies, right? It could be ancient memory, right? But it doesn't matter. It's just another thing to be aware of. Just noticing that that's happening. Is it uncomfortable?
No, I like it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Enjoy it then.
It's very soothing.
Yeah. It is wild how many connections and associations live in the brain, right? And so if you are getting this relaxed state, you could just be reminded of other times you felt something that made you feel relaxed, and that could be rocking. Cool. I wish I was feeling rocked. Thank you. Any other questions? How about Miss Giggly over here?
Because when you're talking about the colors, it's like, yeah, I've seen some green colors and all these different things.
Oh, you guys
I'm
have
like,
done
I can't see anything. I was so blind, I was like, oh, I can't see.
So you did see the colors?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. It's fun. I did not see the colors. anything else? I feel like I gave a lot this first class. No lingering questions, and yeah. So I'm going to offer a suggestion, and that is simply see if you can find 10 minutes a day to practice this mindfulness of the breath. It could be whenever time feels convenient. It could be, you don't have to like, 10 minutes. You don't have to like do anything crazy to your schedule. But it's kind of powerful to see how that might unfold, in your own experience when you're not around 6 other people and a teacher staring at you. Yeah.
Do you prefer guided meditation or like just sitting with yourself?
That is a really good question. I generally like non-guided meditations. Partly because I've been doing it for so long, and partly because I noticed that as soon as I get into the place where I'm like, all right, I'm doing this now, then they start talking and I'm like, stop it, get your voice out of it. I kept on worrying that I was doing that to you guys, but I had to give the instructions. So, but some people prefer guided and love it, and if you find like some sort of YouTube channels that
If you guys want a guided meditation, there's Boho Beautiful. She has a 10-minute morning meditation.
Oh.
And there's another one named Cheek. If you guys want guided.
Cool. Yeah, if you remember, feel free to send that on our group thread, email thread. Right on. Okay, going once, going twice, 3 times. Guys, I completed my first meditation class. I'm so stoked. Thank you. Thank you. It feels so good.